Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Brett McDermott, and this is Doing Big Things, where every week we are going to speak with entrepreneurs from around the world that are doing big things and find out what habits, systems, and mindsets are allowing them to move forward with their lives in a powerful way. Today, I don't want you to try and apply everything you learn. What I ask is that you find one piece of advice that really speaks to you and you put it into action. I'm extremely excited because today I get to sit down with a man that is taking the coaching world by storm. He's built a very successful coaching business in only a few years' time, helping people across the globe build careers they love while avoiding burnout. That's key. He's an international speaker. He's built an audience of over 35,000 followers on LinkedIn. And we're going to pick his brain today to figure out how he's doing everything he's doing. We have been close friends for many years. Jay Abbasi, it's great to have you with us, my man. How are you?
I'm doing great, brother. I'm doing really well. I am happy to be here. Honored to be here, man. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Episode number 3 here. It's still kind of getting the hang of this podcast thing, but couldn't think of anyone else that I wanted on the show besides you. When I first had this idea to start interviewing entrepreneurs that have a rocket strapped to their back, honestly, the first guy that came to mind was you. So I'm happy we got this on the schedule.
Yeah, appreciate it. I'm psyched for you, and dude, it's wonderful to see this journey that you're on. So happy to be a part of it.
I appreciate that, Jay. So just jumping right in here now, you've got 8 years of mindfulness training that you involve in your coaching curriculum. Now, let's talk a little bit about that. Now, what exactly is being mindful? If you could just kind of describe that to the audience.
Yeah. So how I would describe it is maintaining your attention on the present moment, objectively and without judgment.
Okay.
So there's so many different definitions out there of what mindfulness is and what it's like to be mindful. But when I simply break it down, it's when your attention is not caught up on the future of what could happen, worries about the future, or attachments of what could happen, different outcomes, nor is your attention caught up in the past of what went wrong, dwelling on things that happened yesterday, last week, a year ago. Instead, your attention is here on the present, and you're looking at it through the lens without projecting judgments onto it or wanting things to change, just to be accepting of things as they are.
I love that because you hear so much about be more mindful. Mindfulness is the key, but I think a lot of people are just kind of confused as to what it is. I think that was a really, succinct, sound explanation that'll help people know exactly what they're striving for as far as mindfulness goes. What would you say now that we know what mindfulness is? What are the advantages to being mindful if you are trying to do big things in this world? You're trying to be as successful as possible. You're trying to have a great impact on the people around you. Why does being mindful help you on that type of journey?
Yeah. Well, what I find in the high achievers, the people who are making a big impact,
Sure.
what when they're doing what they're doing, they're not caught up in their stories, they're not caught up in any worries about what could happen. They are there. They are
Right.
fully present. You can go from even thinking about athletes. I like to use the athletes as examples because when, let's say, LeBron James is on the basketball court, he is there. He is fully present and
Right.
he's able to perform at his best.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan actually is well known for having a mindfulness practice for years. He had a mindfulness coach. So did Kobe Bryant. So did Shaquille O'Neal. A lot of these great athletes recognize the value in it because they realize when I am here, I am at my best. And what we also see is even in some studies. So Aetna, one of the big companies, corporations that had a mindfulness program. They were the first to really report on the kind of results that they got. And what they got was pretty fascinating. They found that for the employees that went through a mindfulness program and then were practicing being more mindful and were applying what it is that they learned, they saw 62 minutes of an additional 62 minutes of productivity each week from each
Wow.
employee. Right. I mean, think about it. You're paying this employee the same amount. Now this person is producing about an hour more a week, every week. multiply that, compound that over the thousands of employees at the company and Aetna, and it's a huge return on their investment. So that,
Sure.
I think, goes to show you that for those who do want to achieve more, you are going to achieve more. You're going to be more effective if you're able to stay here in the present moment and not get caught up in your stories and your judgments and worries about the past, worries about the future, or dwelling on the past.
It's so true. And it's so easy, especially in today's culture, to be so focused on what you're going to do next week, next quarter, next year, or thinking about how that meeting went yesterday. What did I screw that up? I think probably less than ever, people live in the moment, and more than ever need to make mindfulness a priority. What can people do on a daily basis to become more mindful?
Yeah. So I do think having a formal practice is very important.
Okay.
So people go to the gym 3 or 4 days a week, and they recognize it as, this is something that I need to do for my physical body.
Sure.
So what is the activity that you're doing for your mind, which is the most important asset of all? Because
Sure.
without the mind being operating at that optimal level, you're not going to be able to really show up at 100%. So having a meditation practice that you commit to regularly, consistently, I think makes all the difference. And we know that this is not just an idea. Science has proven the kind of impact that this has on the mind. They've done fMRI scans on the brain and show that people who do have this kind of practice regularly see less of a activation in their amygdala. Their amygdala is the area of the brain that recognizes a threat and goes into fight, flight, or freeze mode. So
Sure.
that means that you are less prone to be reactive and get caught up in your emotions. Plus, what they saw from these fMRI scans is that the prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain that's more evolved, that is able to look at things objectively and be able to problem solve and not get caught up so much in the emotion, that area actually activates and then creates a connection to the amygdala. I'm getting real sciencey. I hope that's okay, because
No, yeah,
I find I can geek out. Yeah, I can geek out on this stuff all day. And so, like, for me,
geek out, geek away.
Yeah, I love this stuff because it's not just my opinion, right?
Sure.
So when I coach my clients, I share this with them to say, like, this is proven. And if a lot of times that's the motivating factor for people, to know that this isn't just my idea, this isn't just a suggestion, this isn't something that, oh, give it a try and see. No, like, we know it works. Just like if you walk 10,000 steps, you're going to be better off than if you just sit home and watch movies all day physically.
Sure.
So that's the one way I would say to incorporate with a formal practice. And then I would say the other aspect to this of how to be more mindful is to look for opportunities throughout the day to do activities with a mindful lens, if you will. So that would mean, like, okay, let's say every day you go out for a walk or you walk the dog. Rather than walking the dog with headphones and playing music or talking to somebody on the phone or just daydreaming, walk mindfully. Simply just notice what it feels like to take every step, notice your environment, and just observe it and be there during that activity. If you don't walk the dog or the weather's not right to do that, then maybe it's when you go out for a drive, when you drive to work, or maybe it's an opportunity to just take a few deep breaths between meetings and to be mindful. Incorporate it throughout your day so that it's not just something you do in the morning, let's say, on your sofa cushion, but you're also incorporating it throughout the day with informal activities.
Sure. I love that. And really interesting that there's actual science and like brain imaging that shows that meditation actually changes who you are, not only in like an emotional sense, but in a physical sense as well.
Yeah. The brain is plastic. We know that from what the research shows. Neuroplasticity has been proven to where what they thought 50 years ago, that once you hit the age of, I forgot it was, like 28 or something, like your brain is stuck and it can't be fixed. We know that that's not true. We know that the brain is constantly being formed and manipulated according to the way in which you are acting each day and behaving and the kind of consumption of material into the mind. It will adjust the neural pathways in the brain. And it's amazing to me that each of us have the faculty to do this to ourselves. Right. So we can take responsibility of that, take ownership of that.
The funny thing about meditation is that few people will kind of debate the fact that it's beneficial. I think most people are kind of on the same page that meditation will help you in some way, shape, or form. But when you ask them if they do it, most people will say, sure, I've tried it. I downloaded the Headspace app and I tried it for 7 days on the free trial. but it just doesn't work for me. Like, I understand it works for other people, but I myself, I can't meditate. It doesn't work for me. What do you say to those people that have tried it, didn't work out for them, and they've abandoned the practice?
I'd say saying meditation doesn't work for you is like saying exercise doesn't work for you.
Right.
And so maybe the type of exercise doesn't work for you. That makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
right? For some people, going on a treadmill every day is a nightmare. They would never do that. But going out for a run, that's their form of exercise.
Sure.
So what I would say is maybe you haven't found the appropriate meditation practice that is effective for you. For some, it's very difficult at the very beginning to simply sit and observe the breath. And their minds are so caught up and it's racing so heavily that it becomes way too much of a challenge. So with those people, I give them a different technique, maybe a bit more of a breathing technique, something that is just about controlling the breath a bit with deep breathing, like 4-7-8. So there's a one I do where I encourage my clients, breathe in through the nose for 4 seconds, hold it for 7, and exhale slowly for 8. That is maybe a better practice to start with than I'm just going to sit there and observe my breath and just notice the inhale and the exhale. For others, maybe it isn't the breath. Maybe it's using faculties like hearing. Maybe it's going into the body and just notice how the body feels is the anchor that they use to bring themselves to the present moment. So really, it's about experimenting. Like you said, I downloaded the Headspace app. I tried this one. It didn't work for me. Well, you tried one. It's like going to the gym. I only tried one exercise. I didn't like it. And so I gave up on exercise. That doesn't make sense.
Right, for sure. Right. Maybe you tried Orange Theory, didn't like that, but then you got a Peloton bike and you actually love it. You have to kind of think of it as exercise for the minds, and you've got to find the exercise that works for you. I love that.
Exactly.
That is really good stuff. Let's like dive in a little bit to your journey, Jay. Now, there's
Yeah.
probably some people out there listening. Maybe they're not pursuing their passion. Now, you were not always this rock star entrepreneur, with a rocket strapped to his back. Before starting your own business, you worked a more traditional job. You were a trainer at Tesla, which is a very impressive position in its own right. But, what was it that kind of flipped the switch inside of you and made you decide to leave the corporate world and start doing your own thing?
Yeah. Well, for me, I mean, the big shift happened many years even before that. So it was when my father passed away. Of course, you know that. And when he passed away, it really created a change in the way I saw my life and what I really wanted to achieve. And knowing that I don't have as much time as I thought I did. And that led me down the path of going for what it is that I really wanted, not to wait for life to just happen for me and to not let other people be the author of my life anymore. That's what I felt like I was doing. Other people were writing my story. I was doing what everyone told me I was supposed to do. I was supposed to go to college and I was supposed to get a job in corporate. That's that event when my father passed away, which was very sudden and unexpected, shifted my mindset entirely and made me realize, okay, if I want to go for what I want, I'm going to go for it now. I'm not going to wait anymore. And that's when I did make that shift away from where I was working in this finance company and I joined Tesla and I started working there. But the whole time I did know that one day I wanted to start something on my own.
Okay.
I knew that. It just was, okay, I got to build myself up and take the steps. And I knew that at Tesla, if I performed well, I could move into learning and development, and training and coaching was always my passion. It was just, it felt natural to me. I could,
Sure.
build a presentation and present in front of people. And it was very natural for me. I could take a complex idea and make it really simple for people. I could coach, recognize in a very short amount of time what the needs are, provide effective coaching to get them through their challenge. And so when I left Tesla, I had people reach out to me, entrepreneurs and other corporate opportunities presented themselves, and I'd go out to a lunch or I'd go on an interview, and everything felt wrong. Everything felt wrong. Like my intuition was screaming. It was screaming at me, not this, not this. Like everything was like nothing.
Sure.
And then, man, I remember I just said, I'm not going to try and figure this all out. I'm just going to let go and see whatever the universe is going to show me next. And I'm going to be open to it. And I got to tell you, it was crazy. Like a week later, maybe even just a few days later, someone called me, an old friend, asked me if I'd be willing to do some consulting for her company. So this
Mhm.
was something I do on my own.
Sure.
And I just went for it. And then that led to another consulting opportunity, which then led me to go down the path of realizing the only way I'm really going to feel fulfilled is if I built something on my own, on my terms, and help people in a way I wish I could have gotten the help years ago when I knew I wanted to make some changes. And that's what led me to what I'm doing now.
Man, that is such a cool story and really empowering. And I think good for people to know that, like you said, this was in your mind and your heart for a while before you actually took action on it. So if someone's listening and maybe they've had this dream in their heart for 2, 3 years and they haven't taken action yet, doesn't mean that they can't take action on it today, tomorrow, or next month. Like there's a lot of people that it just takes time to build up inside of you before you have the courage to really take that first step. And then that first step becomes 2, 3, and 4. Great story, and appreciate you telling us about how kind of your father passing away was the impetus for some of this. It's really powerful stuff, and appreciate you sharing that.
Of course, man. Of course.
Let's talk quickly about just work ethic. I think that just having a great work ethic is so important to doing big things on this planet. Have you always been a really hard worker? I know you're an incredibly hard worker right now. You were just telling me about your calendar this week. It's jam-packed with clients and things to do almost seemingly all day long. Has work ethic always been something you've thrived in, or is it more a skill that you say that maybe you've had to train yourself in?
I'm lazy, Brett. Naturally.
That's
I
not
am
true.
lazy. I no, what I mean is
Naturally.
conditioning is to be up to from as I remember I was getting up early and incredibly productive and getting after the world. And that's not true, I mean, even if I think back, right, when we were in school, right? Like
Yeah.
and I was always trying to find the easiest way to do things. Like I didn't want to have to study really hard. I try to find the shortcuts.
Yeah.
So
That's
I
so
guess,
interesting. That
yeah,
really is.
yeah. And so I had to develop that, man. And how I guess what really created that drive in me was not like not comparing myself, because that's what a lot of people do. They compare themselves to everybody else, and
Yeah.
oh, look how hard this person. Oh, they wake up at 4 a.m, and I need to wake up at 4. Like
Right.
that stuff doesn't serve you. What I found is that okay, if I just really break this down into what is the outcome that I want and what is the amount of activity that I need to do in order to achieve that outcome, then I need to just schedule my time according to those needs. Like, so this is all back to the mindfulness of just looking at it
Sure.
objectively, not getting caught up in it, to say, okay, for me to get this result in 90 days, then I have to reverse engineer that and figure out here's the amount of activity that needs to get done. Here's what I need to learn, right? Here's how I have to go. And from there, okay, I have to now schedule my time so that I still have the self-care activities that are required for me to maintain my own well-being, as well as time with my daughter, which is precious and I'm never going to give that up. And then from there, I just schedule out the rest of my day according to the high impact tasks that are going to deliver the greatest result. And so in doing that, it has naturally developed, I guess, into what is now a more habitual work ethic that gets me to where I want to be.
Nice. That is really, really interesting stuff. So you just kind of like realize, listen, what's the result I want in life? Let's work our way backwards from that. And then let's figure out exactly how much time that's going to take. And we don't need to spend more time than that. That's the amount of time that it's going to take to get my desired outcome. And with the rest of my time, I'm going to spend it with my daughter. I'm going to do other things I enjoy, as opposed to, I think, some people that just feel like they need to be working 13 hours a day every day to get what they want, which is just not the
Right.
case.
It's not the case. I mean, well, it's silly because then you're not going towards. It's like running on a treadmill and just speeding it up.
Right.
Saying, I'm just going to keep. Where are you going? Like, where is that taking you? And
Right.
that's analogy I use a lot with my clients, is to help them to realize that we need to get you off this treadmill because it's not getting you anywhere.
Mhm.
And look, here's the reality for those who are listening who want to build something on their own. If you want to do it in 3 months, you can do it in 3 months, but then you are going to have to work more. You're going to have to put more time.
Right.
If you want to do it in 6 months, you have to work a little less each day, but it's still a lot. Don't get me wrong, but then it would you could pace it out a bit more. And if you want it to be done in a year, it's still doable. You can maybe even do that and have a full-time job and build it over a year. It's just being intentional, telling yourself, I want to do it in this amount of time, and then being intentional about how you then create the work ethic that will get you there.
Love that. I love that. Now, I just kind of, as we're kind of diving into, work ethic and getting things done, you're a business owner, I'm a business owner. And, sometimes when you wake up in the morning, you're not jumping out of bed excited to do the work that needs to be done that day. I think some people that are in 9-to-5 jobs think that's how it is. If you own your own business, you're so passionate that you're literally, leapfrogging out of the sheets and you can't wait to get to work. A lot of days it is like that, but then there's some days that it's just not like that. And you do feel a resistance to work. Is there anything that you do or that you say to yourself internally to kind of push through this resistance to work, when it comes up?
I don't know if I would use the term push through, because I don't, because pushing through suggests that there's some sort of suppression or there's some sort of resistance, and fighting that resistance. The resistance comes up, of course. Sure. It does.
The resistance is there.
Resistance is there. What I do is I go through a process of just recognizing that it's there, accepting that it's there. I'm not really going to fight it. I'm not going to fuel it either and agree with it, right? But I'm not going to distract from it either. Instead, I'm just going to acknowledge, hey, there's this part of me right now that doesn't want to do this, and I accept it. And then what I do is I get super curious about what that is. What is that resistance? What's really coming up for me? What's the cause effect relationship? What am I really afraid of? What's the real anxiety here? Mm-hmm. And then from there, I intentionally, consciously reinterpret it. So this is coming from some of the studies reported by Kelly McGonigal. She's one of the best TED Talks out there, and she reports on the studies done by Aaliyah Crum. So those studies show that stress is not the problem for us. It's how we interpret stress. It's when we think of stress as a negative, when we think it's a bad thing, when we think it's wrong. And when we do, we distract from, and it leads us down this unhealthy path where either we aren't as productive or we are impacting our own physical health, because that stress is not good for us. Sure. But stress is not a problem. Stress actually can propel you into action. Stress is what helps you grow. If it wasn't for stress, you would just be lazy sitting on the couch all day. Stress is necessary. So instead, I reinterpret that experience of that resistance, and I tell myself, this is my body getting me ready for the day. Right. This is my body giving me the energy. This is my body telling me, you got a lot going on here. You got to be ready for it. And so instead of pushing through it, I leverage it. I team up with it, and I have it become what propels me forward, because I tell myself, this is actually my body helping me in some way to take on the day. So I align with it.
I love that. Don't ignore it. Don't push through it. Align with it. Team up with the resistance, the stress, and allow it to propel you forward.
Exactly.
That is really, really good stuff. Really good stuff, Jay. So you're definitely a guy that takes a lot of action, massive action, so important to doing big things in this world. What do you think keeps you taking action on the level that you do, like at your very core of your why? Do you think it's money? Do you think it's fame? Maybe it's love and respect from others, or impact. Maybe it's just a love for the process. Like, what is the real driving force behind the force that is Jay Abbasi?
Yeah. Oh, that's a big question. It's, I guess, and this is not easy to do, and so it's something that's a work in progress for me. I do my best to not be so motivated by my own self-interest, mm-hmm. and to let go of my own egoic pursuits as much as possible. And that's not, what I mean is, I feel, let me put it this way. People in general, we're more motivated when we are working towards something bigger than ourselves.
Sure, I believe that for sure.
They say that, of course, as entrepreneurs, but even people who are in corporate, right? When there's a greater vision that you feel like you're a part of, people are so much more motivated, and they're taking action because they believe it's getting everyone towards a shared vision. Mm-hmm. So I do my best to let go of my own personal interests of whatever it is, financial achievement, or even in some cases providing, even though that's part of it. Of course, I'm driven by that in some degree, but I do my best to bring my attention more towards that this work is helping to save people's lives.
Yeah.
This work is helping to have people completely change the trajectory of their lives and get them to a place that they thought wasn't possible. And I guess having the evidence that it's happened already is very helpful for me, that I've already had the great honor to help a lot of people get there. Then it is the fuel behind what really propels me into more action. So I guess starting out, it was probably a little bit more challenging. I'm not going to lie. Starting out, it's a bit more challenging because maybe you don't have as much of that evidence.
Yeah.
So there needs to be that belief that this will get you there. And I had to rely more on that belief, even though the evidence wasn't there. And now I guess having both is what really propels me more into action today.
I love that. I love that. And you talk about how powerful it is to have impacted so many people's lives in a positive way. And you interact with, so many professionals on a daily basis, and really they're all trying to take their game to the next level, right? That's why they've hired you. That's why they're working with you. And you've got the track record that says that you can take them to that next level. What would you say is one of the most common roadblocks that you encounter that keeps people from ascending to their greatest potential?
Self-judgment is the first one that comes to mind.
Interesting.
That negative self-talk, that critic, and believing the critic is, I think, the most common thing I see. And this is everyone, everywhere, any level, doesn't matter. Starting, entry-level position, mid-level professional, mid-level manager, director, VP, executive. I've seen it everywhere. This beating yourself up, this constant self-limiting, self-deprecating narrative is stopping people. And because of that, they are their own limitation. So they don't know how to work with that. They don't know how to manage that. And so that's the one roadblock. And I guess the second one that has come to mind as I'm talking about this and thinking about the clients that I've worked with is it's similar. The victim mindset. I'm the victim of circumstance. I'm the victim of my manager who treats me poorly. I'm the victim of the fact that they promoted that person instead of me. And that victim mindset is one that I know will limit them if they don't learn how to get out of it. And a lot of them don't like it when I tell them. I will tell them, and they won't like it. Well, I don't know if that's true. Well, listen, this is what you said. Does that sound like a victim to you, or does it not sound like a victim to you? Right? And then they have to, I make them have to acknowledge it, because as soon as you become more aware of it, it's no longer, it doesn't have the same kind of grip on you as it did.
That's real. So basically, negative self-talk and then a victim mindset are two of the biggest roadblocks that you encounter. Just back to the negative self-talk real quick. Do you have any tactics or, things that you teach to kind of combat that, or not combat, but maybe just work with it?
Yeah. The first step is always recognition. So noticing that this is happening, because if you're way too far into it, you've spiraled out to where you can't really break free. The amygdala has already triggered and you're gone. So notice it as early as you can. And to then, with kindness and curiosity, these are the two fuels that you need to have in how you manage through this. With kindness towards yourself, compassion towards yourself, and a genuine, innocent curiosity. So in other words, you're going about it not to try to fix it, not to try to make it go away, but you're really curious. Interrupting that pattern with a question. So wait, is that true? Is what I'm saying here, is that really true? So wait, how is that thought serving me right now? How is this helping? And you see how I'm saying it with a smile. Why? Because it's meant to be playful. It's not meant to be you take yourself so seriously. Is that true? Why do I think that? That's not what I'm saying. Right? I'm saying instead it's like as if a child was screaming on the playground and you went up to the child. Be like, what's wrong? Like, oh, there's a monster after me. Is there really a monster after you right now? Like, is that really happening? You know, like with a smile, and the child's going to start to smile back and be like, I guess not. Right. Treat yourself in the same way. And when you do with that kind of gentleness, then that negative self-talk starts to quiet down and you're able to not let it fuel your activity.
I love that. I think we've all kind of felt like we've been a child on the playground running from a monster sometimes, when it comes to some of the fears that we have in our life. But right, be gentle with yourself, be curious, and don't always believe the voice in your head. Sometimes you have to question it. So, I see some books behind you. I know that you are a lifelong learner. Every time we meet, I ask you what you're reading. You ask me, what I'm learning at the moment. I'm a huge believer in lifelong learning, its importance. I think if I look back at any massive periods of growth in my life, a book or a mentor are usually the stimulus. So have you, I know you have, what books or mentors along the way would you say most molded your way of thinking?
Oof.
I know there've been a lot, but if you had to
I was
pick
going to
one
say,
or
how much
two,
time do we have?
right, if you had to pick one or two, what's really been the most impactful?
Well, I'm going to refer back to something I said before, which has really been impactful, and it's a recent read, and that's The Upside of Stress, which is the book written by Kelly McGonigal, who had that very well-received TED Talk. And in that book, she really breaks down the research, the science, and some tactical things of how you can more effectively work through stress. And for her, that definition of stress is not just or is inclusive of things like anxiety, depression, overwhelm, fears. She puts that all under the umbrella of stress. So I'd say that's been incredibly helpful for not just me personally, but how I coach my clients.
Sure.
I've leveraged that knowledge so much. And so I feel like anyone listening, not if you ever wanted to be a coach and helping others, but for yourself, if you can learn how to work with your stress, I mean, you can become unstoppable. It's the thing that stops you. It's your fears that stop you. So how do you work with it? I mean, that to me is transformative.
The
So
upside of stress. Got it.
the upside of stress,
Excellent.
Kelly McGonigal. So that's the first book that came to mind. Now, you said books that have really molded me. The other one I'd say that comes to mind is The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer.
Okay.
And I recommend that book a lot to my clients because I think it's a very entertaining read because he tells his story. And I think that whenever you're reading a story, it's more entertaining and more engaging. But
Sure.
The takeaways from that book, because he also wrote The Untethered Soul, which is maybe more popular, but I like The Surrender Experiment more because the takeaways from that book that you get from his story, I think can help change the way you look at your entire life and how you approach everything, and learning how to let go and learning how to not let your thoughts, like you were just saying a moment ago, not to believe every single one of them, and how to go with the flow of life and still be active while being still. Because he does a really good job of explaining this, where it's what Bruce Lee would call stillness in motion, where you are active, you are moving, but you're able to maintain a sense of stillness, a sense of calm, a sense of presence in everything that you do. And when you can tap into that, I don't know how it works, but amazing things happen. It's similar to the law of attraction, but without maybe all the woo-woo stuff, and a little bit more practical. Because look, I don't know how all that works, man. I also don't know how gravity works, but it works. And so I still apply it because I know it works. Every time I let go and I just allow things to happen naturally, I set a vision for myself and I just don't let myself get in the way, my own thoughts get in the way, things happen. And so I think those two books, The Surrender Experiment and Upside of Stress, are two really, for me, game-changing books.
Nice. Well, I'm going to move those to the top of my list now. You've sold me. Well, even before when we were talking about your journey from corporate world to entrepreneur, you mentioned it wasn't until you kind of like sat back with a bit of stillness and kind of let things happen naturally. At that point was when things really took off for you. When you were trying to force things to happen, it was a little bit more, of a struggle.
Yeah, exactly. It's fascinating, Brett, because like I hear this story from so many different people. They tell me I had that same experience too. I had that same. And it's fascinating. I don't know what the mechanisms are or the way in which the world works and how that manifests, but it does.
I love it. I love it. Now, super quickly, but before we wrap up here, I just want to touch on delegation. I've always really admired your ability to find really, great employees, great contractors to scale your business. I know that, you've found the utilization of overseas assistants to be pivotal in the scaling of your business.
Yeah.
What types of roles have you filled with these overseas employees? And what does your process look like for finding the right person for the job?
So the roles that I've had filled include an assistant of sorts, right? That handles all of the things that are manual that I don't want to do anymore.
Right, right.
So I can stay, essentially it's kind of working backwards. What's my zone of genius? Coaching people and of course enrolling new clients. So those are the two things that I need to do. And right now I'm not willing to hand those off. Everything else I've managed to delegate
I love
for
it.
the most part. Now, the first person that I brought on was to handle all the admin stuff, the back end operations, managing all the projects and so on. So that was one. The second thing was the person who helps with our lead generation and outreach and reaching out to potential clients who are interested in getting coaching,
Sure.
and really having to coach and train this person to be able to basically have my voice and be able to do this for me, because that's a pretty full-time job. That is a full-time job. And the other thing I've contracted out includes, or I've hired staff for, includes copywriting to some extent, with engagement on social media. My platform of choice is LinkedIn, so I have someone who does that specifically.
Basically,
And
stay in
I
your
also
zone of greatness. Try and delegate the rest. And I don't want to cut
exactly.
you off, but I think Zoom is going to cut us off pretty soon. We are recording on Zoom right now, and I think they're going to give us the boot pretty soon.
Okay.
I didn't want to cut you off there, but I think people have gotten a lot from this episode. I thank you for being with us today. How can people follow you, keep up with what you're doing online right now?
Yeah, so LinkedIn would be the best place to find me. So just look up my name on LinkedIn, and I should be one of the first ones to pop up. Or right on my website, jayabbasi.me. That's two B's, one S. So many people make that mistake, and they put two S's
I
on my
think I
last
still
name.
make that mistake, and I've known you for like 30 years.
I know. Yeah, it was in the email. I was like, come on, man.
Come on, dude.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So the website would be the other way,
I love it.
jayabbasi.me.
I'll work on being more present and spelling your name correctly. Anyway, thank you, Jay. You are wise beyond your years. People are going to really take a lot from this episode, I think, for your time. This has been Doing Big Things. I'm Brett McDermott, and we will talk to you soon. Bye, guys.